Sometimes it's really useful. We're in the throes of training to just sort of step back and look at what we're doing. So today, let's talk about building FTP. Essentially, there are three ways to build FTP. You can push it up with sub-threshold efforts, pull it up with super threshold efforts, and extend it out with longer duration intervals, okay? So what are we doing now in this base phase? For some of us, we're doing between a 6-week to 4-month base phase of training. We're pushing it up with these long endurance rides, with these 2x20s at tempo, sweet spot work, right? All this work right below your threshold, we're pushing it up. Now you're starting to see some pull it up efforts, right? Where it's above your threshold, where we're grabbing hold of that threshold and we're pulling it up. And then there's the one that's not really talked about that much, right? So a lot of people talk about pushing up your FTP. A lot of people talk about pulling up your FTP, but not too many people talk about extending it out. Now, what does that mean? All right, so your event is at a duration, all right? But we're doing, so if you're an hour TT guy, right? Your event is basically threshold FTP for an hour, all right? But yeah, we don't do those types of intervals. We do 2x20 intervals. We do, we might do some 3x20 intervals, things like that. We do long rides, right? But what can the extensive work do? What does that look like, right? They're longer intervals at duration. So if you're going to do a Grand Fondo, which is 100 miles, that's your zone 2. We need to do a lot of dedicated work and extending your zone 2. One of the biggest things that I've learned as a coach is that just because your FTP is such and such a number, which in theory says that you're supposed to do it for about an hour, that's not the case at all. Okay, so I've seen this in so many athletes. I've been with people. I've tested myself. Like I've done a 2x20. I'm very lucky in that I have this 12.5-mile climb not too far from my house where I can literally do an hour FTP test. Okay, so if my FTP is from a 20-minute test says it's 320. That does not mean that I can ride for an hour at 320 watts. If I want to ride for an hour at 320 watts, then I have to do some long, intense duration training. Okay? So let me repeat that. If your event demands that you ride for 300 at your FTP for an hour, then you have to do dedicated time in that zone. All right, so what would that look like for the extensive portion of building FTP? Well, we have the longer intervals, like I said. So we do 2x20s, then we can do 2x30s, then we can do 1x45, then we can do 1x50, right? All at your threshold, your duration that's crucial to your event, okay? Does that make sense? Hit me a note if it doesn't, but 3 ways to build FTP: push it up, pull it up, extend it out. Of the 3, pushing it up and extending it out are the sturdiest. Those really make you a resilient rider for an entire season. The pulling up doesn't last as long. All right, take care. Hope that helps.